what I ask for when I say I want somebody vulnerable is I want someone to be raw with me the way I am with you. If I'm gonna give you the depths, I want the depths. Not because I wanna judge it, not because I want to hoard it and use it, but because I want the depth connection. Tell me your shit. They don't always know what they're asking for, and then they get shocked with it and they don't know how to handle it, because not everybody, and you know this, most people do not have the tools at all in life.
Kelsi, so good to see you. I know this has been a long time in the works, and you told me, you're like, I didn't know this was ever going to happen because I don't have a penis.
This is true. I thought the vaginas weren't welcome here.
They are typically to listen in, but I thought, let's expand our horizons a little bit. And we've had some really good conversations over the internet mostly. And I think there's some things that we agree on, and I think there's some things that we disagree on. And I thought, you know what? Let's have a good conversation and show people how to have civil discourse, even in disagreement.
Yeah, that's what I like about your show. That's what I liked about you when you came on my show a while back now. I definitely am not one of those females that is quite the same as the rest. I think I grew up around a lot of men, and I've been in a lot of environments where I'm the only female in the room. So, hopefully your listeners, most of my listeners are men, about 80% of them. So hopefully I can resonate with some of them, and we can, either give some tools, have some hard conversations, and just show that you can be open.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things I appreciate, or at least acknowledge, and I'm curious if you think the same way, is you have a lot of what I would say masculine energy. Would you describe it that way, or would you describe it differently?
No, I get that descriptor quite frequently, to be honest with you. But I think for a long time, I lived in this weird state of fight or flight after Afghanistan, and it was a coping mechanism to survive. And it was what had kept me safe when my coach decided to assault my teammate, and when I went into the service, and when I went into a male-dominated trade, and when I was a fighter. I'm in male-dominated stuff. But the thing that I've noticed is I grew up with a father who told me I could do whatever I wanted. It didn't matter. There was no gender conversation in our home. I was cutting and splitting wood the same way my brother was cutting and splitting wood, the same way we were doing anything else. So for me, I know others describe it as masculine energy, but I am finding my way back to what it means to be feminine in that sense, and to feel safe in that feminine side of things. But yeah, I'm definitely a little more on that side.
How, if you, since you're saying go back to more of that feminine space and feeling comfortable in that femininity, how would you describe that relative to masculinity?
Yeah, so masculinity is definitely, I feel like for women, a lot of the times it can be a coping mechanism because they aren't able to process their feelings or emotions yet, or they just don't have the tools. The feminine side of things is more of what comes out when I work with clients, what comes out when I'm with my son, what comes out when I'm with my family, which is this more empathetic, hold the space, what do you need, how do I help, and that lightness, that touch, that you don't need to be aggressive all of the time. And so the feminine for me is more leaning into the side that can hold space differently than maybe the masculine side of me can. I have no problem. Like, can I curse on this show?
Oh, get after it.
Okay.
We already went through a bunch of politically incorrect words before we hit record. So
I try to be respectful too, but I do understand that people don't like when I curse. But in all fairness, like, I will give you a fucking kick to the teeth if it's needed. Like, I don't have a problem with that. That's why 98% of my clients are men. It's because I can meet you where you're at, whether that's a female or that's a male. I'll meet you where you're at, and I can match that energy. So it's less for me about, am I dancing in the feminine or the masculine, or am I giving the client or the person or the people around me that container, and what does that container look like?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that was actually one of the follow-up questions is, do you have a difficult time bouncing between being more of a masculine type approach to clients or family and then this feminine touch, which I would describe it very similarly to you. You said empathetic and holding space. Nurturing is another word that comes to mind for me. And I think generally love, but that's not entirely true either. Men are very loving. We just express it differently than women, generally speaking.
And that's what I want to talk to you about, because I think you and I are actually on the same page with a lot of it. I just think it's about the expression. And I think it's about what's accepted in that expression and what that can mean when the space is the right space to hold it in. And I think that's what makes, what you do and what I do different, but the same at the same time, because a lot of the men I work with are special operators or they're CEOs or they're professional athletes. So there's a very hard side to them that they show. But what I've found is if you can show up as the more feminine side and kind of sit, this is how I describe it. So just bear with me. But I kind of sit at the wall and I say that I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be here on the other side of it when you're ready to let me through. And eventually it takes about 3 sessions, but by the third, you can see the chip at the wall starting to happen. And most of the time I find with men, if you just sit there long enough and they feel like they're safe enough, they'll start letting it out. And that's kind of what my perception of like what you do for men in your community is you give them the space and you say, we're right here. Whenever that happens, whenever you're ready, whenever you feel like you want to open up, we're right here. And I do the same, but I just do it in a way where I kind of confuse them with the masculine at first because they feel less intimidated. And then I slowly start to show them that they can trust another woman and that I'm not going to abandon them, that I'm not going to judge them, that I'm going to meet them where they're at that day.
Yeah, Jocko would call it, you flank them a little bit. And I know you've been on Jocko's podcast before, so.
Yep.
Okay, moving on, it seems like. If I'm reading the cues right, it looks like I need to move along here.
You want to talk about it?
No, I mean, we can if you want, but we'll get into some of that. But let me ask you a different question. I think that you and I, a lot of the times, or not a lot, but in the past, even though we very much agree, on social media, I think we've debated in the past over semantics. Certain words. So, for example, the 2 words that come to mind are feminist and vulnerability. That's one that you and I have directly debated about and gotten confrontational with each other.
I felt so bad after too.
It's fine. And because that's what social media is designed to do. But then you and I hopped on a private thread and it was like, okay, like we're actually not that far off from each other.
No.
But I do actually want to get into the vulnerability conversation a little bit, specifically with men. I don't like that word because of the connotation it has with it. So I want to hear where you're coming from. Why don't we start there and then I'll express some other thoughts. So when you say vulnerability, what exactly do you mean? What does that actually look like from your perspective?
Raw. So I'll give you an example. I have a client right now who's an athlete, and this dude came to me, found me on social media. He found me through my Candace Horback clip where we were talking about men, because I do have a really big problem with the way society is looking at men. That's why I know you and I are on the same page, because I am very aware of what society and this patriarchy weirdness is doing to men. And it's downsizing and it's shrinking and it's making them less than. And when we do that, it creates problems. So he found me there anyway. We were talking one time, and I remember he went through something really hard, and he put the camera down. He put the phone down. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "You don't need to see this." I said, No. This is exactly why I need to see this. Let it in. And I saw it, and I saw what he was going through, and I just sat there, and I said nothing.
What was it, an email or a text that he had received or something?
No, it was a death. It was a really heavy situation he wasn't prepared for, and he got emotional. But he wasn't ready to, at the time we just started working, he wasn't ready to show me that. And so I sat there and I said, "Listen, you don't need to hide that from me. I'm not judging that. That means that you're a human being." So to me, vulnerability, that as gross as that word can be, to me, what it really means is the willingness to be open and raw in front of somebody else and to allow it to come out. Because what I struggle with, and I think this is why I get the way I get about it, it's not about the word. It's about the ability to allow the emotions to flow through the body so that it doesn't get stuck. It's about the space you can hold to let the raw emotion climb and hit a peak in the messiest way, in the nastiest way, and whatever that needs to look like, and just kind of be okay. All right, I see you there. I'm gonna meet you there. And then ride that wave out. So when I say I want men to be vulnerable, I don't mean I want you to be a full bitch all the time, because there's a line. There's a line. I do want a masculine man. I do want someone to say, "Hey, I got this." There's a time and a place, But there's also a time and a place for the other side. And I think that when you can hold that space and honor that in lack of judgment, lack of anything other than just, hey, I got you, I think that's where magic can happen. But where I get my back up is when people say, don't be vulnerable. Because that to me is like that. And I say American because I think of the Bible Belt when I think of this. I think of that like Southern, like, boys don't cry. It's like, well, no. We're human beings. The only difference is, you know, there's differences biologically. Obviously, I know what a woman is.
Right,
but,
of course.
But let that shit fly. Because when you let it out, you can be clear-headed, you can feel. And when you feel, you can heal. And when you heal, you can become a better person. So I don't want people to be like this whole liberal left side, blue hair, men can be women, chest-feeding bullshit. I want a man that's strong enough to say, I'm in it. I'm in it right now, and it fucking sucks, and I don't know what to do with it. That's vulnerability to me. That's raw to me. That's real human to me.
Yeah, and I think I agree with most of that. You know, I would say that I think where I take issue, and this is not by any means anything that you said, but I hear this societally, is just to be quote unquote vulnerability for the sake of being vulnerable. And what ends up happening with a lot of guys is they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm supposed to share all my shit. And then they do with the wrong person or the wrong people, and then it gets thrown back in their face, and then they completely shut down and disengage from all humanity altogether with other people, including the women that are closest to them in their lives.
And I don't disagree with that. And I want to make sure that you know that, because not everyone is going to be a great person. I mean, I see the world. I see the younger generation. And part of the problem is, in my opinion, those women grew up without solid dads. Those women grew up with mothers who berated their husbands. Those women, you know, you watch from learning. You don't watch from listening. You watch from examples. So if you have an example where your mother treated your father X, Y, and Z, or did X, Y, and Z, you're going to have that perception that that is how the relationships are supposed to be in your life. But if you can step back for a second and say, okay, and evaluate logically. This is where men definitely nail it on the head. I'm very much more of an emotional intuition type. But when they're able to say like, okay, I can trust you, because I would rather you take the time to see if you can trust me before you open up. But some people are hurting so much. They're so desperate for community. They're struggling that they just let it out to anyone. And I do believe there is a right way to do that and a right person, but not everybody can find it. And it does come back to bite people. And then you deal with the, you know, that what's that word? That male, cisgender, like keyboard warrior, just female hating thing. And when those men approach me, I very quickly correct them that I populate the earth. So lower your tone. Because I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, I'm just going back to what I've seen. Well, I'll say it this way. Culture, and especially social media, has rewarded people for crying because the barista at Starbucks had a hard day because her boss yelled at her. I'm like, okay. And then she'll say, or they'll say, I'm being vulnerable. No, you're not. You're just whining, and it's not like, who are you talking to? Nobody cares. Go talk to your boss about your work environment. Go talk to your significant other about your hard day. Like, don't come cry to me or random strangers on the internet about it. Yeah. And by the way, just because you're quote unquote being vulnerable, or at least that's what you say, you're not being virtuous. That actually, to me, is weakness.
Yes, and you're not wrong, right? There's, again, this is that the container, the time, and the space. That's what it is. I see the same videos. You and I follow a lot of the same people. We know a lot of the same people. And I watch it and I'm kind of grossed out, you know, because we have this belief that being vulnerable means that it's okay to be an asshole. It's okay to have to be negative and weak-minded. I'm good with people having moments of weakness. I can't speak. I spent a decade of suicidality after deployment. Like, I understand when the mind takes over, you know, it's not like think your way to happiness. Like, it's not. That's the reality. Yeah. There's a lot of so much work, so much effort, and it takes getting up every day and deciding I'm going to be either a statistic or I'm going to thrive. And so there is a time and a place, but this younger generation, the societal generation we're seeing here on social media, like I watched a video on Starbucks the other day and I was just wanting to punch myself square in the face. Somebody was complaining that, the lines were long and I worked an 8-hour day with two 15-minute breaks. I'm like, cool, do you want to talk about 2 hours sleep outside the wire getting shot at? What am I going to say? The Taliban keeps shooting at me. I just don't know what I'm doing. Like, shut up and carry on. I'm done with it.
Yeah, and look, I've been here before where I've been critical of comparing woes like, oh, you don't have it hard because these people have it hard. And I'm actually really cautious of doing that because I don't know people's circumstances. But what I do believe is that we collectively have created a bunch of soft crybabies through the way that they're raised, through a lack of fatherhood in their home, where the long line at Starbucks, you have a job, and you're having to pour liquid into a cup. Like, that's not difficult, but you think it is because your life experience hasn't created any meaningful hardship for you. That's a societal issue.
Yes, 100%. And that's like why I do what I do, because if you can keep people doing small, difficult things daily, that stuff doesn't affect you. If you can get somebody into a cold plunge for 3 minutes a day, their life changes. If you can get somebody to be radically uncomfortable in a setting in breath work and you snap them open and they go, I didn't know I could do that, it shows them their own strength and their own power, and it shows them their own resilience. So I'm a big believer in doing incredibly difficult things at least once a day. And if you can do that, you can cultivate a strength that you didn't know existed that can help you carry through stupid things like this. And to be honest, look, I worked at Tim Hortons for 2 years of my life when I was a teenager. It sucked. And yes, lines are long and you get through these modes of like stupid people, but then like get a different job.
Well, and that's the point. I worked at Burger King, and it's not a career; it's a first job, and I realized that.
Exactly,
it's a stepping stone for sure. I am really curious, though. I know you work with a lot of men, predominantly men, within your coaching and clientele. But I'm curious, from a woman's perspective, what is it that women want out of a man when it comes to this vulnerability? Because here's what happens, and I've seen this personally. And I've also seen this with thousands and thousands of men that I've worked with, is their wife or their girlfriend, whoever, will say, hey, I want you to open up. I want you to be vulnerable. I want you to share. I want you to tell me, about your hardships. And so guys like, okay. And so he does. And then she'll bring it up 6 months later, or she'll change her behavior and think less of that guy. I actually don't think that a lot of women really know what exactly they say they want it, but when they get it, they're like, whoa, that's gross, and they're repelled by it.
So I'm going to be careful not to generalize and say that not every woman's like that.
Right.
I know you know that. I know you know that. I'm just saying it. Not every woman's going to be like that. I'm a big believer, and I know a lot of women like this, and I know you don't have a lot of women on, but I do suggest if you ever want to have a very interesting conversation around things like this, Alana Stott's going to be your money.
Alana Stott. She's married to Dean Stott, the British SBS, ex-British SBS. He has a Netflix series called Toughest Forces on Earth. He's a very good friend of mine. Anyway, I digress. The reason I bring it up is because when you have a woman who's been through some shit, that doesn't matter. And the reason I say that is because Alana has written about it in her book. And when I read it, she buckled me, because when I learned what she went through as a child and what she had to come out of and how she was able to build she got punched in the face at a bank by a Middle Eastern dude in Scotland and just had to stand there and take it because he had oil money. And do you know what I mean? Like, when you get somebody who's been through real hardship, those women can handle the vulnerability, and we ask for the vulnerability because what it actually does is it allows us to process our stuff at the same time, right? So hurt people, and people who have been through things can help others heal, and they may think they're doing it for others, but really they're healing themselves at the same time. So it's the type of woman, and I'm not going to judge women for not having hard lives or people for not having traumatic childhoods or experiences, but I will tell you,
when you go through something difficult and you're able to come out the other side, what I ask for when I say I want somebody vulnerable is I want someone to be raw with me the way I am with you. If I'm going to give you the depths, I want the depths. Not because I want to judge it, not because I want to hoard it and use it, but because I want the depth connection. I want deeper than a cookie sheet. Don't waste my fucking time, whether you're a client or a partner. Tell me your shit. Because I can guarantee there's nothing you're going to say that's going to shock me personally at this point in my life. But not all the women are like that. So when they ask for it, they don't always know what they're asking for. And I think there's that naivety that's in there. And then they get shocked with it and they don't know how to handle it. Because not everybody, and you know this, most people do not have the tools at all in life.
Of course. Right.
Yeah.
I did hear one thing, and this made a lot of sense to me because this has been something that's on my mind because it is a popular topic, this idea of vulnerability. I was talking with a good friend of mine. Do you know Connor Beaton with Man Talks?
Why do I know that name?
He's done really well. He wrote a book called Men's Work, and he talks a lot about this, but he talks about it from I would say more of a masculine frame that isn't real common with guys who seem, again, I'm overgeneralizing, I know, but guys who seem to generally talk about these vulnerability type subjects tend to be a little bit more feminine in the way they approach. So you take a masculine guy and he's like, I don't even resonate with that. But Connor does a really good job. And what he said, and this was interesting, I want your take on it, is he said what women are asking, and again, we're generalizing, I know, but when women are asking for vulnerability, what they really want is to know that you're aware of your own deficiencies and you either have a plan for addressing it or you currently are working through it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's brilliant. So I'm going to read that book. So remind me at the end, please, because TBI brain. I think what's beautiful about that statement is I want to know that you're going to try. I just want to know that you're going to try. I don't need you to have the plan yet. That's the thing. So that's where I'll differ a little. I'll kind of a little on that. I want you to tell me because I know I have the tools and I know we can come up with a plan together. If you don't have the plan, that's okay. But I want to know that you're going to work for it. I want to know that you're going to put the effort in. I want to know that you're, even on the days that it hurts and you feel like your chest is caving in, you know that this will pass and you will keep working. Because that to me is the marker, right? That grit, that drive. If I see you in your life doing X, Y, and Z at work, if I see you doing a lackluster life where you have no passion for sport, no passion for yourself, no passion for anything, I don't think you're going to be passionate about healing yourself. And anyone can say, well, not everybody needs to heal themselves. And then my response is, okay, go look in the mirror then.
Yeah.
You know,
use your term, grow, heal, whatever.
Grow, heal, move, change, evolve, don't care. But I want to see growth. And growth, like just personally for me as a female, is very attractive to me. People who want to continue to strive, not settle. And I'm not saying the hustle culture, you need to write 1 million books, you need to get out there, Whatever your niche is, whatever you love, whether that's gardening, whether that's woodworking, whether that's building houses, whether that's being a stay-at-home father, Ryan, I want to see you love what you do. That's it. So show me that you've got drive, you've got a passion for something, and I can fuck with that. But when you're just kind of like, I'm not doing great, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want you to, judge me, then I'm like, snap out of it. We can do this. But I can't do this if you're not going to try. Right.
Well, and I think where a lot of men get themselves into trouble is they habitually complain about their woes. Let's say work, for example. I got passed over for a promotion, or I lost my job today, or I'm going to start this business, and they never start it. So then they go to their wife and they're like, hey, hon, this is what's going on. And she's like, oh my gosh, again, we're doing this again. And he's like, see? But really what happened is it's not her fault. It's your fault because all you're doing now is you're just whining. And she's tired of your whining. She actually wants to see you improve and do something about the thing you're complaining about.
And see, that's the thing with me. If you're going to complain about it, I'm here for it. Let's go. Now, what are we going to do about it? Right? Because my friend taught me this is one of my favorite things in my coaching practice. I use the hell out of it. I just love it. It's so simple, okay? Awareness is the finish line, period. Once you are aware, you get to decide, am I going to stay the same or do something about it? Because if you tell me you're going to stay the same and die a slow death, that to me, that's the stuff that sets me off. That's that masculine side of me that's going to come out and go, get it together. And I'm not talking, let me be very careful. I'm not talking about mental health because there is no get it together button. That takes as long as it takes, as long as you're trying and using the tools and you're putting the effort in. That takes as long as it takes. It took me a decade to come out of the PTSD stupor that I was in. So I'm not talking about mental health, but if you're saying, I want to start a business and I hear you say it over and over and over, I'm going to look you in the face and go, you know what you need to do. Stop it. If you're not going to do it, stop talking about it. Period.
I think most women won't do what you just said. I think they'll feel the way you feel, but the problem is they won't express it. And then in 5 years, they're like, I want a divorce.
Yeah, resentment.
Because they don't express it. And so that lack of communication, and I'm not putting that on women or men. I'm just saying this is the general dynamic.
It's just lack of communication. It's just lack of communication. People live in a place of fear, Ryan. You know this, right? So you can look at it this. Fear is just false evidence appearing real. Or I have this new one that I really love. I wrote it down. It clicked for me. Please give me a second. I want to pull it up because I think it was like, it's really simple, but what is it? Oh, face everything and rise. You, again, awareness, you get to decide, am I going to let fear literally stop me from living the life I know that I can have? Or can I look that in the face and go, I'm going to face everything and rise. And when I do, I know there will be light. But I can understand that there are people who don't have community, don't have support, don't have the tools, and they feel like they're in this helpless despair. I get that. So before you feel like you can't do it anymore, that's why you need to reach out to a friend. That's why you need to have the hard conversation. I don't feel like I can do this right now, man. Sometimes you just need somebody who's been through it to grab your hand in the dark and pull you out the other side. That's why I work with men, by the way. That's why I work with very few females. I love working with women, but it's got to be a type of woman.
The right ratio.
Yeah,
okay, got it. Yep.
It's the type. It's not about the ratio. It's more about the type, right? I understand you're not always going to be self-motivated. That's my job, is to keep you there. But with the men, every time I've had a problem, when I was at my wit's end, when I was going off of all the drugs and I was doing the last kick at the can thing, I had a ranger reach out and grab my hand in the dark and say, I got you. But I also had those same rangers surround me and put me in the middle of a circle and go, we've got you. You be what you need to be. But they also were willing to show me their hurt side. So I knew I wasn't a burden, or I wasn't being weak, or I wasn't being womanly about things. I got you. You need to let it out, let it out. We're going to show you our sides of ourselves too. And that's how you bond, right? So it's definitely an interesting dynamic that I work within. But if we can change people's perspectives around what it means to trust a woman, to heal with a woman, because I do believe that men groups like you have, and the way that you do with your community is necessary. But I also think, and I'd be curious, and I'd also be super open to this at some point if you'd ever have me, to come in and sit with those groups and show them that not every female will leave, abandon, hurt, judge, and crack their ass open with breathwork in a way that they've never seen before.
So if that is the case, then really it just comes down to a man's ability to discern, is this a woman who's going to have my back if I'm this way, or is this a woman who's going to resent and hold it against me? So two things, what would a man look for in a woman in order to find a partner like that? And number two, if he's already in a relationship that he's not just going to abandon, and maybe she's not like this, how then does he begin to have more of these real, and to use your word, raw conversations with his wife?
Yeah, so I always suggest if you feel like you're not ready to have that conversation on your own because maybe each other is reactive, or you see some things where you're like, I don't know if that's going to be received well, I always suggest, when people are fearful of saying the hard thing that their body already knows but their mouth won't say, write it down. Write it down, and then when you're alone, I want you to look yourself in the mirror and read it. because I want you to see how you're going to respond to the actual words when they hit your ears, how your tone is going to shift when you say it out loud. Because a lot of people won't say the hard thing because they're so fearful of the response. So we have to remove the expectation. You have to walk in with open eyes. If you have somebody that you're with and you want to have the hard conversation, write it down, say it out loud, because then you might actually go, oh, maybe I actually don't feel that way. I just never heard it out loud. I just never processed it. It's just another way of processing. Now, if you're looking for a woman like that, you feel like, maybe I could trust her, maybe I could do this. I'm a big, what's the word? Small flags, tiny little flags. I pay attention to everything. I'm a bit of a psychopath that way. So details matter. Details matter. So if I catch a woman speaking to somebody else disrespectfully, like a waiter or like at a cashier, I watch how you treat people when you think people aren't watching. Those are the flags you watch for, because that shows character when the brain isn't conscious. That's the subliminal, subconscious, checking out at Walmart. It's you're not thinking about that. So I always say, pay attention to that. Also, pay attention to how that person treats themselves. What is their self-talk? How do they speak to themselves? Because if they speak to themselves negatively, it's not like it can't get better, but it also means that that person is okay with living in that negative state enough. And maybe they just don't have the tools. Maybe they just don't know how yet. That's it, right? Those are the things that are big for me is the subconscious stuff. It's the stuff when people think you're not watching or people think that you're not paying attention. That's the stuff you're going to notice. And how she holds space for other people, whether it's her children, her parents, her community. Does she have community? Does she talk to other women? Does she digest just negative, and I mean this, like Real Housewives shit, like just drama, just like the TV shows she watches, like, because you are the sum, right? In every way. That comes down to what you absorb with your ears, your eyes, the people. So if she enjoys drama, watch what she watches, watch what she listens to. That stuff, those are the flags, man, that we can really see somebody's identity in. And so pay attention to that. Write it down, say the hard things out loud, see how you feel. If it happens where you want to have that conversation with her, I always start with this. Hey, this might be uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable saying it, but I cannot hold things in anymore. So I'm about to say something and know that it only comes from a place of love, regardless how it sounds. And I would ask that instead of reacting, you just sit with it for a second and let's communicate it. If you can't do that on your own, bring a counselor in. Bring a coach in to just sit there, because that person is going to observe behaviors you're not going to catch on to.
I think there's another thing too, and we often hear this advice, and that all is really good advice. And we often hear men anyways, when they're communicating with their wife or their wife is communicating with them, that you don't need to solve their problems, right? You talked about holding space. You don't need to solve their problems. She's going to vent, or she's going to talk about her day or some of her frustrations, or, whatever is going on with her family, whatever. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't need you to solve it. And I would actually suggest the same is true, or at least should be true, when a man communicates with his wife. Like, I don't need you to solve anything. I just need to explain it to you. I need to tell you my plan. And I've already got it figured out in my head. Like, I'm just going to do it. I just want you to know what's going on, so you know why at the dinner table I'm a little distant tonight than I normally am.
But see, that's all that takes, Ryan, is communication, uncomfortable communication. Hey, this is not about you. I'm in my head on this right now. I'm a little wrapped up. When I seem distant, it's not you. That right there gives your spouse a cue. Oh, okay. Just going to let this ride. And like you said, it's not about solving the problem. That's where people go wrong. I've been guilty of it myself. Like, I have plenty of friends who I do plant medicine with, and we'll come out and they'll look at me and they'll say something, and I'll go, now what I do is I go, coaching or listening?
Yeah, right.
I'll give you both. You want me to listen? I'm here. You want advice? Happy to do that too. But you have to communicate what you need.
Yeah, I think, you've heard the term covert contracts? Have you heard of that?
No.
So a covert contract would be, in this scenario, I invite you on my podcast and I've got this idea of what I want the conversation to be. And I've also got an idea of how I want you to show up, but I don't communicate it with you. And then I get pissed because you didn't show up the way that I had in my head and in my mind about how this podcast would go.
Unmet, unsaid expectation.
Same. Yep. Same concept. And I think that's where we get ourselves into trouble is, you know, as a man, you might want to communicate with your boss or your child or your significant other. And you say, you have this whole thing planned out. I'm going to tell her this. She's going to say this. We're going to agree. Everything's going to be wonderful. And then we're going to go make love tonight. And then you don't share any of the expectations. You don't tell her what you're looking for, and you just blurt out whatever you want to blurt out. And then she responds poorly, and you're like, see? She didn't do what I wanted her to do because you didn't tell her what you wanted. And I'm not saying tell her what she needs to do, but at least communicate what you might be looking for out of the dialogue.
Yes. And my thing would be, again, write it down. Get the scrambled mind. That is the biggest tool we have. When the overwhelm hits, the hard conversations are there. You're not sure how you're going to respond. You're not sure how you're going to feel. Pull the threads down and write it down. Put it in front of you so you can perceive it differently. If you want her to respond a certain way, say, hey, I know what I'm about to say is hard or uncomfortable. I just ask that if you're going to respond, just think about it before you say something, because you can't take words back. They do cut, and once they're out, they're out. And if you have these expectations, that's the other thing. Expectations do nothing but set you up for failure because our minds play tricks. So why not just go into the conversation saying, I'm going to say this, and whatever comes, that's okay.
Yeah, I was just writing that down because when you were talking about expectations, because they just make people miserable. I mean, I think it's important to have expectations of personal performance, but I think outside of that, we really have to let go of the expectations of other people and external sources. Even your success, you cannot predict it. You cannot completely control it. You can only control the way that you show up, and you should have a high expectation for that, but very few things outside of it.
Well, and that's the other thing too, right? That's that personal growth conversation. That's that, what do I want in this life and how do I best give it to myself? And then how do I best meet the bar that I set for myself, right? So I have insanely, some would say, completely unhealthy expectations for myself. Completely irrational. The shit I want to achieve and the things I want to do, when I tell other people, they look at me and go, you're a little insane. And I go, no, because it's only delusional until it works. And that's what it takes. It takes crazy. It takes mad. It takes delusional. But if you can do it right, it can work. But you have to be willing to be different and uncomfortable. You have to be willing to say the hard thing. And not everybody is going to be built for that. So when it comes to your own expectations, all that I ever ask of people is, if your bar is here, move it to here. Because people will meet you where you're at and you will do the same. That's the beautiful part. If you set the bar high for you, you will either hit it and surpass it, or that will show you that you just don't have the drive you thought you have. And if you want the drive you thought you could have, that comes down to your habits and your routine and what you absorb. So the way I work in my practice is this. I'm going to set the bar high. And it's not to give you some unrealistic expectation. 99% of the time, Ryan, people meet me at that bar. It takes them maybe 3 months or 6 months, but I'll be damned if I've ever had a client not meet it.
Or the alternative is they just won't run with you, and that's okay too, because they're not interested in what you're interested in.
That's okay. I'm very hard to keep up with. So if you want to keep up, you're welcome to come along. But this is one of my favorite sayings in the whole wide world, and I do hope one day I get to sit down with him and just tell him how much this has affected my life. Legitimately, Snoop Dogg says the best thing in the whole wide world. I'm not exaggerating. It is not my job to come down to you. It is your job to meet me up here if you want to hang with me. I run fast. I run hot. I run a lot all the time. But the difference is I'm good with that now. So I'm going this way. You want to come? Do the work.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so to get back to this conversation about vulnerability, you know, the terms I've used, and again, I think we're very much in alignment on it. We were just
The communication styles.
That's what it was, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I thought this conversation would be good to have, because a lot of the times I find that when people disagree with me, they're disagreeing with some small thing. Maybe it's one thing that I said out of 100 that they disagree with, and so they just throw it all out. And I do that too to other people, by the way. Or they don't like my word choice. So my word choice, as opposed to vulnerability, is simply this. Guys, just be honest and humble. That's it.
Yep.
If you get home and your wife says, hey, you know, how was your day? You don't need to say good if it wasn't good.
Right.
You say, hey, it was hard because we just lost, a huge client. And so I'm a little distracted and that was tough, but our marketing's on point and I feel like we'll be able, because here's the issue. At some point, somebody's going to say, well, damn, how many hard days are you going to have before you do anything about it?
Well, here's the thing though, right? The hard days are dictated by either your mental health, your work, your lack of effort, or your effort that is going unseen. So you have to remember that when somebody says, you know, I'm having a hard day, I'm having a hard day, I'm having a hard day. What is the reasoning? Because based on the reasoning, whether it's lack of accountability or lack of actually doing anything about it, or it's I'm in something different and I'm struggling around the mental health aspect of it, which is making me struggle with the work aspect of it. So you have to continue to dive to the root of the problem. And that's why when I sign contracts with people, I make them sign a 6-month contract, because I know by month 3, like clockwork, you're going to let me in and we're going to dive to the stuff that really is the root. And then all of this will make sense. But if you don't dive all the way down, like if you're unhappy at work, okay, you're unhappy at work. Let's talk about it. Why are you unhappy at work? Well, maybe I'm feeling unfulfilled. Maybe I don't have passion for it. Okay, well, why don't you feel fulfilled? Well, because I used to be told all the time that I'll never be good enough. Oh, okay, let's go there. Who told you that? Mom told me that. Interesting. Why'd mom tell you that? Well, because mom struggled with her life. Oh, so hurt people hurt people. Oh, I get it. So when you can get to where something comes from, that's where the magic really happens. But you have to be willing, because what you just said, that's vulnerability. But really what that is just incredible communication tools. That's it.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about the 6-month thing. It's like the analogy I was thinking of as you said that is, you know, taking a half of a round of your antibiotics, you know, for a bacterial infection, right? It's like, I guess, you know, the first 3 or 4 days, it like is good. But if you don't finish the treatment, it's just going to come back and create habitual problems in your health.
Yeah. And I got to be completely transparent with you. I have 100% re-sign rate. And it's not because people are not getting what they need. It's because once I show them that they have a person that will be right there and I'm there, and that they have a spot, that replaces the psychiatry, that replaces the medication, that replaces the drinking, that replaces it. And when you put them into a community that's doing that same work, they go, I'm not alone. And they want to have that spot where it's like, it doesn't matter what you're going to come at me, because I meet my clients weekly, right? So this isn't like, I see you once every, no, every day, every like Wednesday at this time, that's your slot. You can text me whenever you need me. I'll answer you within a 24-hour period, but I only work with X amount of clients. So I make sure that I can fill that cup when it's needed for them, but I can also be really hard on them when it's needed too. Hey, you're slipping. And I see it because I do this thing where we have shared notes with every client. Okay, this works incredibly well. When people leave their coaches, a lot of times they do their thing for the day or two, and then they have a tendency to fall. So what I do is we have shared notes, and I have a client for each one, and it's got the things you need to check on that box every day. If I see you not participating there, you know it, because I'm going to pick up the phone and say, do your shit. You're the one paying me. You're spending money. If you're not going to participate, either am I. And you bet your ass the second they have that shared note, they know I'm watching. When they feel accountable to more than just themselves for the moment, if that's what they need to get them going again, then that's what we do. And then eventually they go, hey, I don't want to do that stuff. I actually want to start looking at my childhood. Can we do that? Or, hey, can you help me? I'm trying to write a book. Or, hey, I'm working on this business and I'm not really sure where to start. You know, so they always say, I want to start here. And then we end up evolving into all of these things. And what comes out of it is, it's okay to just say the hard thing. You just need the right container.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're doing coaching, but it sounds like a lot of therapy as well. And I don't think you're a licensed therapist by any means, but it sounds like you're doing a lot of mental therapy.
Yeah, but I do it because I have every resource in the book. You know, it's
right. And
I've done.
I'm not saying you shouldn't by any means. I'm just saying it feels like that's what you're doing.
Sometimes, I mean, you know, because I would call it more of like less of therapy and more just holding space. Because I think I've had the same psychiatrist since Afghanistan, so 2011. And, you know, the one thing he taught me is I would never say like just like reverberate problems. I would go, what's happening to my brain right now? And why is my body reacting like this? And he would go, your hippocampus is feeling this way. And then your frontal lobe is going to do this. And when you rewire and fire that, this is going to happen to your sympathetic nervous system. And so I've gotten an education since 2011 in everything I feel like I'm handling. And if that's the other thing I feel like my strength is, if I don't know the answer or have the tool, I'm going to tell you what I don't know, and then I'm going to go, give me 24 hours. I'm going to get you that answer, and I'm going to get you that person. And if I can't take you further, I'm going to drop you with someone. I'm never going to leave you or abandon you, but I will transition you to somebody who has that specialty.
The approach you're talking about is interesting, which is, you know, physiologically, like what is happening between my thoughts and my response. Because I mean, clearly there's a big stigma around men's mental health. And part of my problem, and I have a therapist, by the way, but I also am guarded at times, and I am hesitant, resistant as well. And I think a lot of the times it's because I feel like simply just talking about my problems, and you, I think, alluded to this a little bit, it really just ends up accentuating or highlighting the problems when maybe it really wasn't that big a deal. And now I've blown it out of proportion. I've made it a big element of my life, or I've turned other little nonsensical little annoyances into these big life problems that I really didn't have that issue before I came in here to deal with something else.
But here's the thing about that though, too, because that's a two-way street, right? So if you don't acknowledge it, you don't see it, feel it, hear it all the way through it, that's going to stick. So
fair.
And so if you kind of go, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. That's ridiculous. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. And you downplay it. All that you're telling your body is the alarm bells that are going off. Like, so a good friend of mine, Dr. John Deloney, told me this, and I love him so deeply for this. If you don't listen to the alarm bells, they're going to get louder. And it can be uncomfortable and this is why I would never go and get my PhD, to be honest with you. This is why I would never go into traditional psychology or psychiatry, because I'm allowed to dance in a completely different way. I'm allowed to say things in a completely different way.
Right. Yeah.
And what I love about that, though, is if your alarm bells are going off, that's all they are. They're alarm bells. But if you don't talk about it, sometimes those alarm bells will just get louder. And you can come up with a plan and say, hey, I'm saying this. It feels like I'm just making it worse. It feels like I'm adding fuel to the fire. I don't love that. So instead of just me talking about it, can you give me a tool to process it? Can you give me a journaling exercise or a grounding practice or if I go run this amount, when's the endorphins going to kick in? Like, where can I think about this in a spot that's not going to spiral me, right? And you just need to sometimes stop the negative feedback loop and go, okay, I hear it. I hear it. You don't love it. You feel like it's getting worse. So here's what we're going to do about it. Now try that. Insert that, right? Stop the negative feedback loop and go, when you feel that, I want you to do this. Tell me how that works. And then you hit it again and we have the conversation again. And then we try the tool. You'll know if that's the right tool or if you have to shift that a little bit.
I mean, I like that approach, and that's what my therapist does now, but it's taken a while to find that person. And it's a man that I resonate deeply with, that we're friends to some degree, casual friends even outside of the office. But yeah, I like that point, because one thing I've got in the past, and this is, I hate this stuff, is there'll be an issue and then the therapist will say, well, how does that make you feel? Well, like shit, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Right.
Well, yeah, but like I already know I feel crappy about it. What do I do about it? Like, I don't need you to help me figure out that this is not a good feeling. I get that. What do I do to get over this?
So that's going to be the tricky part, right? Because you have psychiatry and psychologists nowadays who are growing up in this really, I mean, you've heard Jordan and I talk about it, you've heard him talk about it. They're growing up in this very, strong men, make da-da-da, make da-da-da. Like, I get it. We have weak people. We have weak people trying to heal people. We have people who have never used psychedelics trying to teach people and integrate medicine with people who have never experienced it. So I won't talk on something I haven't gone through. I won't help you on something I feel like I don't have the tools for. And I will not try to educate you or do anything that you don't want to do. But I will push you to the line. And I will say, you can jump. It's safe to jump. But I'm not going to do it for you. And so psychiatry and psychology right now is going through this massive burnout bottleneck phase. That's why coaching is exploding. My thing to people is there's a million coaches online. There's a million coaches everywhere. Everybody's a coach now, right? So I always say to people, my biggest resume, like in terms of showing you that I can do what I do, is that book right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is the rawest, hellish, I tell people don't read it before bed. It'll make you sad. It will. No, I'm serious. I was just in Halifax. I'm like, don't read it. Don't read it before bed. But it's honest. And what it shows is that you can genuinely go to hell. And if you decide that you don't want to self-select, this is how it can be done. It's not perfect. It's not pretty. It's not, this beautiful journey, but it is a journey. And it's a journey that shows that I don't quit. And I also don't quit on my people, which means I'm not going to quit on you. So you can be an asshole. You can say it doesn't work. We'll just keep shifting until we click. And it will. And it does every time, as long as the person is action-oriented and wants to try.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's pivot a little bit. Let's pivot to the next topic I wanted to address, which is feminism. This is the other one that we debated. And I'll give you my frame first, and then I want to hear your frame. Okay.
Love it.
My frame is this, and I think this is the way a lot of women who are self-proclaimed feminists would describe it as equal opportunity for women, which I don't think there's very many people, there are, I'm sure, but I don't think there's very many people who would disagree with that. I don't. The way that I view it today in today's modern world is not that it's this fight for equal rights and equal views and equal positions and titles. It's actually become, from my perspective, a fight against men. So not for equality, but against men. So when I say, I think the one that you really took issue with was something like, I probably said feminism is, I probably said disgusting. That's probably the word I used.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but that's
modern.
And that's fair. That is fair. But the problem is some of these things, these words, they get hijacked and then they're just used. And that's why I think, yes, modern feminism is a plague on society, and it pits men and women against each other, which is a horrible, horrible place to be.
All division divides. It's no different if it's gender or politics or whatever. Going to make a controversial statement here. Most people are stupid, dude. Most people don't.
I would fall into that category.
They're not self-aware. They're groupthink. They're tribal. We're all tribal. We're all tribal to an extent, right? Because obviously you left on the plains, you die. I get it. We have that innate, I want to fit in, I want to fit in. But people will override their own intuition. They will override their own belief systems, their own character, their own integrity, all just to be what somebody else wants them to be so that they can feel like they fit. People don't love themselves. People don't care for themselves. People think that others will fix them. People rely on spouses to fix them, to make them happy. That's why you get this modern feminism, because they hate themselves, dude. They live in a victim mentality. They've been told since jump that women, you make less money, you'll never climb ladders, you'll never have a seat at the table. Kick the fucking door in and make your own table then. I'm kind of over it. I'm going to rant for a sec. I'm over it. I'm going to tell you why. I'm over it. You and I both know the space I'm in. You and I both know the people I know. You and I both know that it is a goddamn absolute shame the amount of subscribers I have on my YouTube. It's disgusting. It's fucking criminal at this point with the guest list I have. But that happens because when women like me speak the way I speak, it hurts men's egos. It makes other men feel small and insignificant. Because what I do, right? I'm just the mirror. That's it.
But what about what you're saying it would make, because I don't feel that way and we're friends. Like, what about what you're saying would make people feel that way?
You're different. You're secure in yourself. I don't trigger the shit out of you. I don't make you feel uncomfortable when I use a deeper tone. I don't make you feel uncomfortable when I swear. I don't make you feel uncomfortable because you're secure in yourself. The people I make feel uncomfortable and the women I make feel uncomfortable are the women that don't love themselves, the women that aren't going to do the things, the women that haven't done what I do. So they either make themselves feel less than around me, which makes me sad because I will accept them for whatever they've gone through. But what else makes me sad is the women that sit there and tear other women down. These people, like in the service, dude, people will step on you to get to the next stop. And it is no different than the podcast world. It is no different than the business world. It is the mindset that there is, that there's only room for one. There's not. It's rising tides. But if you look at me and you feel threatened, you need to ask yourself, what about me makes you tickle inside? Because it ain't me. Because the way you feel about me is a perception of you. That has nothing to do with me. And so with feminism in general, I believe the bad bitches that like literally were like, I want to have a credit card. I want to be able to buy my own house. I don't need to have a man to walk around with me. I want to be able to have the freedom to do that. Those women, the ones that got the right to vote, those are the women. Those are the real deals. The ones now, the ones that wear the pussy hats at the conventions and they're like, we're losing our rights. And you know what? Don't be the liability, be the asset. If you suck at your job, get better. You want more money? Fucking ask for it. But you live in a state of fear. You live in a state of victim mentality. Dude, I could have stayed in that. I could have been like, oh, I got injured in Afghanistan. My life is over. I was in a woman in a job I shouldn't have been in. And I did that. I did that. And then I woke the fuck up and said, I'm so sorry. No. It's not how you were raised, girl. That is not who you are. Step it up. But I needed other people around me to remind me who the fuck I was. Just for a sec. Till I got it back together. And now my job is to tell other women, like, I'm so sorry. And this is where Alana's money on this. This is where she's money on this. You are not what happened to you. You are what you do with it. So you get to decide, right? You get to decide. But again, that's the awareness piece. Most people will avoid and bury their head in the sand. So the feminists of this day are victims in their eyes of an oppressed system when you have one of the most ill-equipped, uneducated, lack of training, lack of experience VPs I've ever seen. Somehow she made it up there. So are you kidding me? The person that pretends she's black when she's Indian, she made it to the highest office in your land. If she can do it with the level of incompetence that spews out of her face, I'm sorry, sweetheart, get your shit together. Try harder. I don't understand it. And if you don't like how it's happening or you don't like how you're being perceived or how you're treated, look yourself in the mirror and ask the hard question. Am I doing anything about it? Am I adding to make it worse? Am I around things that are making me not healthy? And be honest. If you're going to lie to yourself, that's one thing. But I'm not hanging with women that go, oh, I'm the victim. This happened to me. Dude, I have so many women. I'm looking at books sitting right here. Friends of mine who were raped, who went through assault, and somehow came out of it stronger. Do you know what I mean? It's like it can make you or it can break you, but you have to decide what you want to do with it because it can be a superpower, but you got to remove that victim mentality, man. And these women nowadays, not all of them, there's a lot of bad bitches out there, but a lot of them, they're in for a rude awakening. Yeah, I think it's just this victimhood hierarchy. Well, I mean, maybe, the world is going in this position where victimhood is powerful. It's not, but that's, yeah, right. It'll correct. But, when people say, oh, I'm a woman, so therefore I've been discriminated against or I'm having a hard time. Well, everybody is, if you don't have an education, then are you discriminated against when you're paired up to somebody else? Like,
Of course, there's discrimination. Of course that happens. And it's not always bad either. I think the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues I take is with this modern feminist movement is that it's marketed as a woman's choice for how she wants to live her life. As long as the woman's choice is go out there and be a boss babe and do everything that the men are doing. And I actually don't have a problem with that. If there's a woman who can do a good as job of a man in a certain role, all the power to her and all the power to an organization or whatever it is. No issue with that. But where I take issue is when the feminists, these modern feminists, say it's a woman's choice, and then the woman says, well, you know what? I think I'd like to stay home and raise my kids. And those same feminists will say, oh, you're being trampled on. Oh, you want to be barefoot and pregnant? Oh, you're going to let your man keep you down? That was her choice. I thought you were about choice, but they're not. It has to fit their narrative in order for it to be right.
And that's where we fall into the trap, right? This story we tell ourselves, because we are the stories we tell ourselves. So I'll give you an example. So when we got pregnant with my son, I was like, I planned on being a stay-at-home mom. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. His mom was a stay-at-home mom. I had a great, I was all about it. Then I had him, and I went, oh, no, I am not that woman. And I am a very loving mom, and I'm a very present parent. But I also didn't, once I realized that, I watched my mom give up all of these things, but to a detriment, not to a positive. I wanted to see my mom, when she was doing her things, love something outside of just us. I wanted to see her thrive a little. You know, there'd be days where I'd be like, I know you love doing that. Why don't you go do it? She'd be like, no, it's okay. And I'm like, no, I want to show my son that you can be loving, you can be supportive, and you can be a stay-at-home mom, but you can also do stuff for yourself. You can also not feel guilty for going, you know what, this Saturday I'm going hiking. I just want women to understand that it's okay to want more, but it's also okay because more can look like staying home with your babies and having a bunch of chickens and raising them and making healthy food. That is one of the coolest things. Women can do all of it, quote unquote, to an extent, obviously. So decide what sets your soul on fire, because when you decide and you're actually happy there, everything and everyone around you feels that love. So whether it's you want to work, whether you want to stay at home, I support whatever you decide. But the women that judge, that's because they hate themselves. They know they can never do it. They know they don't have it. And it's the mindset of lack, not abundance. Triggers the shit out of them, man.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things is, and this is very frustrating to me, and I like what you said about choose. If you want to go into the workforce and kick ass and build your empire, okay, make sure you find a partner and a man who's on board with that. That might be an issue if he's not.
Right.
If you want to stay home and raise your kids and build your farm and homestead, all the power to you. Yeah. I have a problem when I see this narrative peddled that every woman ought to be out into the workforce. And then these women enter the workforce and they go spend their most, childbearing and rearing years in the workforce because that's what they were told they're supposed to do. And all of a sudden these women are partners at the law firm and now they're 45, 50 years old. And they're like, well, damn, I kind of want a baby. I kind of want to be a mother. And they've missed that opportunity because they were fed a lie that they have to go do what men do because they're just as good. And doing what a man does doesn't make you good. What makes you good is fulfilling what it is you want to do to the nth degree.
Right, exactly. So when I have women like that, what I say before you make a decision on whether you want children or not, number one, are you with the person you would have their babies? Like that, don't force yourself to have children if it's not the right person, because what's the right person, you'll know. I didn't think I'd ever have children, Ryan. But then I met my husband and I was like, I'm having your kids. Put a baby in me now. You know what I mean? No, I'm serious, but you'll know. You can't force that. But then the women that fall for the lie and the trap, that's because they don't listen to inside. They listen to up here and not in their body. And it's because they don't know how. And it's because they don't know what they want, because they don't do the self-inquiry exercises. They've been told something so long they think they have to believe it. They don't actually ask themselves and look themselves in the mirror, dead in the eyes. What do I want? Does this feel right? Does this feel good? Because if you want to go get after it and you're like, you know what, children aren't for me. Okay, cool. But also remember that we do have a clock. And so I encourage people, if you're going to decide to either not have kids or have kids, whether it's by yourself, with a human, or adoption, or whatever your method is, be all the way in. Go sit and talk to someone first. Because if you're like, I'm not sure, well, go pull it apart. Go ask the hard questions. How would my life change? What would that look like? Do I want it to look like that? Would I be happy in that? If I couldn't do this type of work, would I be sad? Okay, so now if I'm draining from this cup, will this take from that? Will I be the same person? We're never the same after kids, but you can decide how you respond, how you react, but you can only do that by asking the hard question. Most women just do what they're told or how they've been raised, and that doesn't always jive as an adult. So you have to ask yourself, I ask myself this stuff like every 6 months to a year. I check in with me. I go, hey, how's it going? How did that feel? Has that been good? Have you been present? Where have you been lacking? Where can you do better? And I just constantly check in with myself because I'm going to change, because we're supposed to change. And so with kids and women, it's like, you want to do that, cool. But this idea that we all have to have this lifestyle, dude, my life is not for everybody. People see my calendar and cry sometimes.
Yeah.
And I go,
You've shared part of it with me. I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds miserable. But it's different for everybody.
But that's what sets my soul on fire.
Right.
That's why I'm so amped up when you see me doing everything, because I love what I do. But I also love being with my son. And I also love Lego. And I love going in the woods with him and, building fires and like foraging. I love all aspects. But I understand that I didn't know that before. I didn't know myself before. I'm learning who I am, and who I am is going to change. So what she needs is going to be different today than it's going to be tomorrow, it's going to be the next day. So I just observe it. I don't absorb it. I see it for what it is logically, and then I allow the emotions to go through. And when you let them go, they're like the waves. They're going to come, they're going to spike, and then they're going to come right back down. You have to give yourself permission to ask the hard questions.
Yeah, I think this comes down to something you were saying earlier about this just level of awareness, just being aware, being able to communicate, ask yourself tough questions, and then make your choices as appropriate. Yeah. Kelsi, I want to end with this, and maybe I should have started the conversation. You had, when we agreed to do this podcast, you had sent me a text and you said something like, I can't remember exactly what it was. You're like, what are we doing here? Because I think you had some fear about me setting you up, and that's not what I wanted at all. I knew we would agree on a lot and maybe disagree on some things, but you it sounds like you had an experience where you felt teed up is what it sounds like. So help me understand to the degree that you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, man, look, I've been down this road before. I've been canceled by somebody I thought I could trust. Right? You can make whatever excuse you want. It is what it is. I come out the other side of it, though, and I came out fucking kicking and screaming because I don't really like when my character's attacked. This is what happens in our job, man. We are the type that are willing to put it all on the line and say the hard things. And we also know that comes with hate, that comes with malice, that comes with feelings, that comes with jealousy, that comes with you're in the seat I want to be in, but I'm not willing to do the work. So how fucking dare you? Because that's all that was, by the way, right? I know the person that was that sent the email. Like, I know the one who started the pages. Like, I know. And that's what makes me laugh. Because I'm like, I know you, dude. And I know what your life is like. And you're miserable. And you're a drunk. And that ain't my problem. And your perception of me means fuck all. Because if you don't have my phone number, your opinion does not matter to me. Because you don't know me. That's the hard truth. That's where that masculine side has to kick in. Because I've been forced sometimes into situations where I thought I could be. And you saw it. I don't know if you ever heard the first episode, vulnerable to the point where I was disassociating and I was hyperventilating and I was giving everything I had, because if I'm going to do this work and I'm going to get in front of a microphone, I damn well better have something to say that's going to teach somebody something, because I didn't go through this hell for nothing. I didn't do this for nothing. I didn't plan on doing this either with it, but that's what it turned into. So the least I could do was show up and give everything I got. And what came was good for a minute, until people who believed they deserved to be where I was got all upset about it. But that has nothing to do with me, Ryan. That ain't about me. That's about your own your own feelings about yourself, your own lack. That's your own drive problem. That's your own you didn't heal. That's your own I've done the work and you haven't. I'm just the mirror. And like my buddy George taught me with that same saying I said before, it's just the pink elephant, man. If I make you feel some type of way, it's because I'm aggravating the thing in you that you're not. It's the thing that's not healed, right? My job is to be the mirror. So if I set you off, ask yourself why. Is it something I'm actually saying that's offensive, that you're truly, I'm offended? Or is it, shit, I want to do that, but I didn't do the work to get there. I didn't heal. I didn't put myself out there. I didn't write a book. I didn't put myself to be judged. I'm okay with being judged now. Let's say this, as hard as that was when that happened, and I mean, Spiral City, son. I mean, lost speaking gigs, company crash, blacklist things for a hot minute. When that happened, that was bad. That put me on the ground. My kid had to go somewhere else. I couldn't function. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I had no recourse. I had nothing I could do. And I had to make a decision. Do I say something out loud? Or do I shut my mouth, gather all of my evidence, do everything I can, call every British person I know, get written statements, get videos, get photos, do everything I can, which, number one, should never have had to do in the first place if I was just given a phone call. Let's start there. So lack of accountability showed up. Lack of hard conversation showed up. The difference was I shut my mouth and I said, nope, there's going to come a time, this is going to come around. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to heal it. We're going to deal with it. And then I went and did some medicine and I sat on it and I said, you know what? There's a lesson here. There's a lesson here. Where I am going is going to require very thick skin, the thickest. So this was your first opportunity to get kicked in the teeth by people you thought you could trust. Now you learn something. You read people different. You want to know their motives. You want to understand. That's why I said, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
What do you want to talk about? But I think that's fair. Lived experience dictates,
sure.
right?
And then you can decide if you want to do it or not. That's fair.
Exactly. So I'm actually glad I went through it because it prepared me for when Peterson came out. It prepared me for, when Lex came out. It prepared me for when I started doing these other shows. And hopefully when I do Joe one day, I'm not going to be, touched by it because I realized a long time ago, people online don't know me. They know, and I show everything. I'm not like show the positive things. I'll show you when it sucks. I'm going to show you the hurt because that's where the growth lies. Everybody goes through it. Stop pretending you don't. So it taught me, and everything I've gone through has been a lesson. Even if I have to give it a minute and kind of plot backwards, it made me stronger. And ultimately, I knew if it was my character, I'm got the nickname of Thomas the Tank for a reason. I don't quit, ever. So if you think you can play, just know I'm a psychopath when it comes to my character. And I play too. You don't have to be some special operator. Just remember, my old job means I can reach you from 40K. I don't have to be near you.
Well, Kelsi, this has been a good conversation. I'm glad we did this. And it's been a long time in the works anyways, and we've been friends. And so I appreciate the work you do and the messages you're putting out. They're not always convenient, we'll say it that way. And I know that you and I will have more disagreements in the future for sure. But we'll continue to talk and have these conversations. Tell the guys where to connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, including your book as well.
Yeah, for sure. So first off, anytime, whatever you need, whatever tool I have, whoever I have access to, it is yours.
I appreciate
Just
that.
ask.
Likewise, yeah.
I just want to see you thrive, man. I do, at one point, I do want to come to one of your groups. I do. I really, genuinely will make the trip. I do want to. Secondly, everything's on social media. I'm definitely banned on Instagram. It's been taken away a couple times. So I suggest if you want to either listen to me rant or talk to the majority of my guests, which are men, the Kelsi Sheren Perspective, we just rebranded the show. It's been going for 4 years. You can find me at Kelsi_Sheren on Instagram. My book is available. It's with Simon & Schuster, so it's available Barnes & Noble, on Amazon. I always just ask, if you're going to get it, can you leave a review? Because there is not a lot of female combat books, and there's not a lot of those. So my goal is to eventually hit the list with that, just because it's like a personal thing I got going on. And then most importantly, if you need help, man, ask. If you want to work together, I've got a website. It's kelsisheren.com. You can send an inquiry. I get on a call with you. But I'm not for everyone, and that's okay. But I am for the people that are ready to work, that are ready to do the stuff, that want to change, whether it's their profession, whether they want to become a better athlete, or they just need a space to learn that not all women are going to fucking abandon you and hurt you. And so I'm here, and whatever I got, I'm happy to help. You just have to ask for it. And that's the hardest thing you'll ever do. But I promise you, when you do it, you'll feel a lot better. So thank you for the opportunity. I never thought this was going to happen, but it's been an honor.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. So we'll keep in touch. Obviously, I'll sync everything up, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, dude.